Thessalonians Chapter 4, Through the Bible. Part 6. When I was a young preacher in a denomination, they didn't have much to say about prophecy. Very candidly, I don't think the ministers knew very much about it. They would give an excuse, saying, "You shouldn't preach on that. That is deep truth and should be given to mature saints. It shouldn't be given to new believers." Well, it's too bad that Paul didn't know that, because he hadn't been with the Thessalonians for a complete month, and yet he was teaching them prophecy. In fact, when we get to the second epistle, we will find that he taught them about the great tribulation and the man of sin, the Antichrist who is to come. Paul ran the whole gamut of prophecy for these Thessalonians. It is nonsense to say this is not to be given to new believers. It is to be taught to them, and Paul is the demonstration of that. It is clear that Paul taught the Thessalonians that the rapture of the church might occur at any moment, that it was imminent. Then Paul left Thessalonica. He went to Berea, established a church, and was there for some time. Then he took a ship and went over to Athens. We don't know how long he was there either. He was waiting for Timothy and Silas to bring word from Thessalonica. They didn't come, and he went on down to Corinth. After he was there for a while, Timothy and Silas came. They came with questions from the Thessalonians to ask of Paul. So Paul wrote 1 Thessalonians to encourage them and to answer their specific questions with regard to the rapture of the church. During this unknown interval of time, after Paul had left them, some of the saints in Thessalonica had died. A question arose in the minds of the believers. Had they missed the rapture? Obviously, Paul had taught them the imminent coming of Christ, or this question would not be pertinent at all. Paul had told them that the Lord Jesus might come at any moment. These saints had died, and the Lord hadn't come. Had they missed the rapture? What would happen to them? Paul gives the answer to this question in this epistle. To us, the question the Thessalonians had is not meaningful in the same way as it was to them. That is because you and I live 2,000 years this side of 1 Thessalonians, and literally millions of believers have already gone down through the doorway of death. Therefore, most of the church has already gone ahead, and a small minority remains in the world. Paul had taught the Thessalonians that the coming of Christ was imminent, and this is still what we believe today. Between where we are right this moment and the coming of Christ for the church, it is tissue thin, which means it could happen any moment, even before you finish reading this page, or the coming of Christ could be way down yonder in the future. There is a grave danger today in setting dates for the coming of the Lord. Some are doing that, and it is dangerous because they do not know when he will return. The Lord said that we do not know the hour he will come. They might pick the year correctly, but they surely won't pick the hour. I don't think they will even hit the year. When they set dates, they are robbing believers of the opportunity of looking for him to come. Now, the Thessalonians were concerned about the saints who had died before the rapture had taken place. We need to keep that in mind as we go through the rest of this chapter. But I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 13. I would not have you to be ignorant. I love the way Paul says that. We have seen it before in the Corinthian epistles. When Paul says, I would not have you ignorant, brethren, you can pretty well put it down that the brethren are ignorant. Paul just didn't come out and say so in a flat-footed and crude way. He is more polite and diplomatic. I would say that he did it in a very Christian way. Concerning them which are asleep, Paul is referring to the death of the body. This never refers to the soul or the spirit of man, because the spirit of man does not die. We shall note that as we move through this section, but first I want to mention several reasons that the death of the body is spoken of as being asleep. 1. There is a similarity between sleep and death. A dead body and a sleeping body are actually very similar. I'm sure you have been to a funeral where someone has remarked that so-and-so looks just as if he were asleep. Well, in a way it is true. The body of a believer is asleep. A sleeper does not cease to exist, and the inference is that the dead do not cease to exist just because the body is asleep. Sleep is temporary. Death is also temporary. Sleep has its waking. Death has its resurrection. It is not that life is existence and death is non-existence, you see. 2. The word which is translated as sleep has its root in the Greek word, kami, which means to lie down. And the very interesting thing is that the word for resurrection is a word that refers only to the body. It is anastasis, and it comes from two Greek words, histemi, which means to stand, and ana, the preposition up. It is only the body which can stand up in resurrection.